In the idyllic valley of Lumina village, there lived a young man named Phelan. Phelan was no ordinary potter. His hands seemed to possess a magical touch, gifted by nature itself. While others had to spend months just learning to control the speed of the potter's wheel, Phelan needed only to lay his hands upon the clay for it to feel alive, dancing gracefully to the rhythm of his fingertips.
Every time he touched the clay, the objects that emerged possessed a beauty beyond description. Whether it was a small water jar or a sculpture of a bird in flight, it always had a surface as smooth as a baby's skin and proportions that were absolutely flawless. The villagers of Lumina and merchants from distant cities would constantly gather around his small workshop just to witness this magic with their own eyes. Because of this extraordinary talent, Phelan achieved great success at the young age of 15. Every masterpiece that left his hands was so flawless that it earned him immense praise and gold medals from his youth. Medals, awards, and accolades poured into his life like a bursting dam.
Phelan won gold medals, and people would constantly sing his praises, presenting him with gleaming gold medals and shining trophies. He began to wear a smile of sheer arrogance. Because success came to him far too easily, Phelan began to grow arrogant. Piece by piece, he started constructing a golden blindfold that slowly obscured his vision. He began to believe that he was an extraordinary being, a person who was simply incapable of making a mistake. One day, his old teacher, a veteran potter, tried to remind him, "Phelan, don't forget to wash the clay thoroughly, and don't forget to strengthen the foundation. External beauty cannot withstand the weight of time. Phelan, don't let praise make you forget that beauty without a strong foundation will fade away like smoke in the sun." He just mocked him with a laugh and replied, "Master, look at these gold cups covering the wall. Do you see my work is broken? The world has told me that your success should be the most successful." A royal soldier galloped into the village, bearing a golden decree for Phelan. News of Phelan's undefeated talent had reached the ears of the power-hungry king of the empire. The king commanded Phelan to sculpt a gold griffin standing 10 meters tall to be displayed at the palace gates. This was an unprecedented task that no one had ever accomplished before, and Phelan accepted it with a look of supreme arrogance. Phelan leaves the village in a luxurious carriage. He ignores his friends and old teachers who come to bid him farewell, thinking of himself as a clay angel now. Phelan stands before the great gates of the palace. The height of the palace walls does not frighten him, but rather makes his pride grow. The king orders Phelan to carve a huge griffin to place in the middle of the palace courtyard. Phelan promises to make it shine brighter than anything in the world. Driven by overconfidence, he worked with reckless haste, wanting the statue completed quickly to garner even more acclaim. Phelan bypassed essential foundational steps. He failed to sift the clay thoroughly and did not allow it to dry according to proper technical standards. When small cracks began to appear at the base of the statue, instead of breaking it down to start anew, Phelan used precious gold wash to paint over and hide them. He believed that the brilliant shimmer of the gold would conceal all his errors. He draped a massive golden silk curtain over it. He used hundreds of tons of pure gold to paint over the cracks. The outside looked magnificent and shiny, but inside it was soft clay, waiting to melt, waiting the inauguration day, fully convinced that he could never fail. Inauguration day arrived, and the palace square was filled with the triumphant sound of trumpets. A massive golden silk curtain draped over the statue that was Phelan's pride. Dressed in a golden suit, Phelan stood beside the king, his eyes looking down on everyone with disdain. As the king pulled the cord to drop the golden curtain, the colossal gold griffin was revealed in all its magnificence. Everyone erupted in cheers of celebration,
But in that very
Because the
second,
internal
a loud
foundation was
crack
weak
echoed
and
through the
improperly
air.
prepared, the massive statue began to collapse from the bottom up. The gold painted on the outside could not withstand the internal decay. In the blink of an eye, the magnificent statue turned into a pile of clay and worthless gold dust right before everyone's eyes. The king was absolutely furious and declared, "You are no artist. You are a fraud who uses gold to hide your own cowardice." Phelan was stripped of all his medals and banished from the city to live on a desolate mountain where no one lived. In that single moment, Phelan fell from the highest peak to the absolute bottom.
On the parched mountain, Phelan lived in hunger and shame. He tried to mold clay once again, but his hands trembled, and his creative intuition had vanished. He wept bitterly, for he had finally realized that his easy success from the past had robbed him of his ability to learn. The hands that were once soft like those of a millionaire had become calloused, darkened, and as strong as stone. But within his heart, the golden curtain that once blinded him had dissolved, leaving behind only the light of wisdom. Until one day, he met an old man who made clay pots for the villagers. Seeing Phelan, the old man asked, "Why do you want to paint gold over clay? Clay has its own beauty, as long as you are honest with it. Phelan, you failed because you loved the glitter of gold more than you loved the clay itself." Phelan knelt down and begged to start learning all over again. He spent 5 years just learning how to wash the clay clean. He spent another 5 years learning how to make the base of the pot strong. He no longer cared for praise, he only cared about the true quality and honesty of his work. The hands that were once soft like those of a millionaire had become calloused, darkened, and as strong as stone. But within his heart, the golden curtain that once blinded him had dissolved, leaving behind only the light of wisdom. Phelan began his journey of learning once again, starting from the very bottom. He spent years learning how to select the soil, how to wash it, how to let it dry properly, and how to build a solid foundation. He no longer possessed gold medals, but he had hands that were strong and a heart that was humble. He crafted simple water jars for travelers, jars that kept water the coldest and were incredibly durable. This time, his success did not come from praise, but from the true value of the objects he created. 15 years later, the empire was struck by a severe drought. All the golden jars within the palace failed to keep the water cool. The king heard news of a compassionate potter on the mountain who could craft jars that kept water exceptionally cold and remained incredibly strong. The king summoned Phelan back. Phelan walked into the palace barefoot, no longer wearing the flashy golden attire of his past. Upon reaching the palace, he knelt at the very spot where his magnificent statue had once stood, his face filled with regret. Afterward, he sought an audience with the king, presenting a single, very simple brown clay jar. The king asked, "Why don't you paint it with gold to make it beautiful like before?" Phelan smiled calmly and replied, "Your Majesty, gold can blind the eyes of men, but it can never hide the truth of the foundation. It has value because it serves the people, not because it serves pride." The king understood clearly and asked Phelan to return as the Grand Master of the palace. However, Phelan requested only to be a teacher to the children in a remote village. As Phelan sat teaching the young ones, the golden curtain that had once blinded his eyes was repurposed as a doormat in front of his workshop to constantly remind himself. True success does not lie in never failing, but in knowing that you can fail and being forever ready to learn. Success is an inspiration, but do not let it blind you to the point of forgetting to develop your foundations and basic knowledge. If you believe you are too great to be wrong, you are the one most likely to fall. Maintain your humility and always strengthen your foundation, for the light that shines from within is the only light that never fades. Without a solid foundation,
everything we build will vanish, just like Phelan's gold griffin statue.